Well, Jay Warner Wallace sitting in today for Greg Koukl, who you usually have sitting in the seat doing the Stand to Reason show, and I'm glad to be sitting in for him. He is writing hard on the next book and is away from the microphone, and that gives me a chance to sit with you and talk for the next couple of hours. We talk about all the things that matter most to us, the things that sometimes we don't talk about and we don't get a chance to even think about because we're so distracted by culture, and a lot of the times that's a good distraction. I mean, I don't know about you, but I find that sometimes I need a break, and so I limit myself to just mostly sports, just for that period of time where I just need a break from the kind of news cycle. There's one thing I've noticed that you can, if you don't take a break from the news cycle, there are times you got to have a healthy balance, right? You want to be in the know. You want to know what's going on in the world so you can know how properly to respond as a Christian. And that's a lot of what we're going to talk about today on the show. And we talk about every week here on the show. And a lot of times you need to kind of protect yourself from the news cycle so you just don't go crazy, okay? So I'm here to hopefully help you navigate the difference between those two approaches. Now, I want to just talk about a little bit about some housekeeping before I give you my opening remarks, and then we'll be open for your phone calls as well. And I encourage you to call and make a ask a question, and I will be happy to answer anything you want to talk about, whether it's part of our topic today, what I talk about when we start, or it's not. Either way, I'll be happy to talk to you about your questions related to the Christian worldview. Now, Greg is out this week. He's also out next week. But next week we're going to have Robbie, who's going to be here to host, and he's going to be talking to Robbie's part of our staff here at Stand to Reason, and Robbie will be talking to Titus Kennedy. Now, Titus Kennedy is, to me, like the modern Indiana Jones, and he's written a book on archaeology and the New Testament. As a matter of fact, I knew he was writing this book before we did a conference together, and I'm getting ready to. Next year, we're going to update Cold Case Christianity, and I just wanted to and I thought his stuff is. This is a guy who's not just examining what others discover, but he's actually putting a shovel in the dirt himself and going to those places that we often just read about. And so Titus is one of those guys who you are going to want to be here next week to hear his stories. Also, he's incredibly knowledgeable, and he kind of connects the dots in a way that's accessible. He's a young guy, and I think you'll enjoy that interview with Robbie and Titus Kennedy. So we just also, one of the ways I get to interact with all the folks here at Stand to Reason is through our reality student apologetics conferences. And we just have announced the theme and the speakers. I'll be one of those speakers again next year at the Student Apologetics Conference, where it's going to be called, the theme will be Seek and You Will Find. We've also got Jason Jimenez, we've got Mary Jo Sharp, and all, of course, the entire staff here at Stand to Reason. I think sometimes you can, to say we've got all these great speakers coming, which we do, I kind of overlooks the fact that Stand to Reason is built on the strength of great speakers. So to me, if you just came to hear, Greg and Tim and John and Robbie and Alan, you'd be in good hands. You don't need anybody else. But it turns out we've got lots of other folks too. And one last thing I'll say before we jump in here today is that we do have 2 new Stand to Reason University courses that cover the resurrection and biblical hermeneutics. And that if the biblical hermeneutics course I'm excited about. These are 2 courses taught by Tim and Alan. Some of the stories as Tim was filming for this Stand to Reason course are hilarious. The backstory of him freezing out there with Greg Cash filming this curriculum is just it's worth. I think it'd be worth watching it just to see the breath come out of Tim's mouth as he's freezing to death trying to record the sessions. Anyway, that to me was worth the price of admission. So I hope you will also get ready for that. And you can find them at training.str.org. Training.str.org. All right, so there's a couple of housekeeping things taken care of there. And now what I want to talk about are 2 threes, at least maybe one. We'll get the first one out. And I'm struggling now as I speak around the country, and we've been writing books. We often talk about how young people, Gen Z, young Christians, need 2 whys for every what. 2 whys for every what. And so we will often proclaim a what is true about Jesus, what is true about God, what is true about the New Testament. And young people want the 2 whys for that what claim you're making. Well, first why is, why do you think that's true? What are you basing that on? Like, why should I believe that's true? That's the first why. And it's not unusual. I mean, even in a culture which is shifting toward a view of subjectivism, that maybe you might think, well, does anybody really need a why other than it works for me? Well, young people still want to know, is that what the why is? They want to know, what is your why? Why do you believe that claim is true? The second why, though, I think is becoming more and more important, and we often overlook it. And the second why is, why should I care? Okay, so that's true for you. You like, this is your claim. Good for you. But you're an old guy, and this is, you like theology. You like this, whatever. Why do I care? How does it affect me? Why should anyone my age care? The second why is, does it matter? And this is where I've really started to struggle in my own view of as a case maker. Whereas that may not have been a why that was a big deal for me. If it was true, it mattered. But the fact that it was true is what made it matter. But that may not be the case for some young people who are other people in your world who now need to know, why should I care? Does this matter at all? Which is one of the reasons why when I was writing Person of Interest, I realized I was maybe 3 chapters in when I talked to the publisher and said, I want to shift the entire, I think that the godness, and I talked about this recently with Jeff Myers of Summit Ministries. By the way, Summit Ministries is back in full form. We've got students. A lot of the Stand to Reason speakers speak on faculty at Summit Ministries in Manitou Springs, Colorado. If you're a young person, your Gen Zer, has not yet been signed up, we still have a few openings at summit.org. You can see the immersive 2-week experiences. You ought to have your young people there. And all of us have taught at Summit at one point or another. So you'll see one of us there probably if you send your young people. And I was talking to Jeff Myers, who is the president of Summit, and we kind of agree that we don't know that the godness of God is as important to young people now as the goodness of God. Like, the challenges are shifting from, is there a God? That if the Christian God was real, he's not good. In other words, if I said to you, I want to be able to sit with you for a moment and make a case for Nazism, I think for the most part you would say, well, I don't care about your case for Nazism. That's not good to be a Nazi. So I don't care if you can make a case for it or not. It's not good. And your Iron Age book called the Bible is just another outdated source of knowledge that is the source and the cause of all misogyny, racism, homophobia, transphobia, every phobia and ism you can think of in culture that's bad. You can directly relate back to it's not that it's not about the godness of God, it's about the goodness of God. And we have to be able to show that it's not just that that God exists and that Christianity is true. It's that also that we thrive under a view of the world which comports with reality, that the Bible describes the world the way it really is, that all things that are good and matter to you in literature, art, music, education, science, and worldviews stands on the shoulders of a Christian understanding of reality. And that is part of what we want to be able to communicate to people. So as I look around and I see that so many attacks now are being leveled against Christianity as an alleged source of evil or ugliness, we have to be able to show that not only is it good, not only does it matter, but there are 3 reasons, I think, why we can celebrate it, why we ought to be celebrating it. So let me just give them to you. The first one I've already kind of mentioned is that the Christian worldview, number 1, describes the world accurately. We live in this universe, right, that had a beginning and appears to be fine-tuned for life. And not only that, the biology that emerges in this universe, it comes from non-living matter. And these organisms also, as you examine them after they appear and life originates in the universe, it appears to be designed. It has at least this non-controversial, relatively uniform observation that there's an appearance of design, even if you deny a designer. The idea that that the universe appears fine-tuned and that biology appears designed is accepted by a number of scientists and biologists and astrophysicists, even if they don't hold a Christian worldview. We also experience something in the world that we recognize as consciousness, and we have free agency. And we also recognize there are objective moral truths, and there's a standard by which we can measure things to call them evil. There's a standard of righteousness that defines the nature of what is not righteous by comparison. It's the Christian worldview actually accounts for these features of the universe in a way that space-time, matter, physics, and chemistry cannot. And so you don't need to be embarrassed of your worldview and feel like the entire burden of supporting your view is supporting anything is on your shoulders, because the people who deny God's existence believe they can explain the origin of the universe, the fine-tuning of the universe, the appearance of life in the universe, the appearance of design and biology and free agency and consciousness and objective moral truths and even a standard of righteousness. They believe they can actually account for these things with nothing more than space-time, matter, physics, and chemistry. Well, good luck with that. You don't need to be embarrassed of your worldview, because it turns out that when you can properly articulate this, it actually describes our universe, our world, our lives, even our nature accurately. The second thing you can celebrate is that the Christian worldview holds up to scrutiny. You can analyze it. It's not simply a set of, and this is not true for there are other theistic worldviews that don't have this nature. What I mean is that the kind of worldview that Christianity is, it's more than simply a set of wisdom statements or proverbial propositions. Christianity is not just a collection of the wise sayings of Jesus. It's a claim about a series of events that occur in history, including, of course, the resurrection. Christianity is rooted in an historical sequence, in an historical event, the life and ministry and death and resurrection of Jesus. And like other historical events, they can be falsified or verified. And the evidence supporting Christianity is not just something, it's robust. It's actually significant. We've written books about this kind of evidence because it exists. Try to write a book of the robust evidence for Mormonism, and you're going to find that's not a very large book, because you cannot make an evidential. This is why so few Mormons are evidentialists in their defense of Mormonism, because you cannot take this approach. We can, because it turns out the events that are recorded in the pages of Scripture can be supported by external evidences like archaeology, the internal evidences of language and of pronoun use and of locations of certain geographic features of the world, or certain groups within those geographic features. We can actually cross-examine these things and apply a template, an investigative template. I wrote about this in Cold Case Christianity. So it turns out the evidence supporting Christianity is not something that you can just brush off. It is, if you actually took the time to look at it, it's robust and it's significant. They can be tested using the same template that I've been using in criminal trials for years, because I get tons of eyewitnesses who will come to me. I don't trust any of them. My skeptical nature says that you're all a bunch of liars until I prove otherwise, but there's a template in place by which I can determine if a witness is reliable. And you could take that same template and apply it to the Gospels. That's what I talk about in Cold Case Christianity. So the historical accounts in the New Testament can be tested to see if they are reliable. You don't need to be embarrassed of your worldview. When it's properly examined under that template, it holds up to critical scrutiny. So number 2, the Christian worldview holds up to scrutiny. And finally, number 3, it's the Christian worldview that provides a solution. Look, every worldview tries to answer the important questions that are asked by worldviews, right? Every worldview offers a solution to a problem, but not every worldview accurately identifies the problem it's trying to solve. Christianity identifies the problem as our sin nature, our fallen nature, our persistent inclination toward bad behavior post-fall. We have a sin problem. This is why, for example, I'm not convinced by worldviews that argue that the problem is a system, because I can change the system. We're going to find a way to corrupt the new system. The problem precedes the system. The problem is a human problem. And anytime I say, well, I can just change these environmental conditions and we can solve problems, well, are you going to be able to change the nature of humans who are in those environmental conditions? Because if you can't change that, good luck. You're just going to have another humanly corrupted system in place, because we can ruin everything. Okay, and this is why we have so many examples of Christians who don't provide models of Christian living within the church. And you can point to Christians who have corrupted. They'll even take this teaching of Scripture and find a way to pervert it to achieve whatever their fallen notions are, whatever their fallen ambitions are. We do this because the problem, it's actually accurately described by Scripture, is a persistent inclination toward bad. It's that sin problem. And Christianity, though, is more than just a description of how to be good. right? It's unlike other works-based theistic worldviews. And by the way, every other worldview, every other theistic worldview is works-based. Christianity is the one outlier. It recognizes that we have no ability to be consistently good. We're not, like, I don't worship a good God. I worship a morally perfect God. If God has the power to eliminate all evil, to eliminate all imperfection, he certainly can eliminate moral imperfection in his own nature. This is a morally perfect being. I might have had a good day. I've had some morally good days, but I've never had a morally perfect day. Neither will you. And this is why we need someone to stand in our place. And this is what the Christian worldview does. It recognizes our inability to consistently perform. And even though other worldviews, other theistic worldviews will encourage us to work hard and to do our best in one way or another to check certain theistic boxes, certain religious boxes, certain dutiful boxes, it turns out only Christianity recognizes our complete inability to check those boxes. Other religions offer a work regimen. Christianity offers hope, because only Christianity offers Jesus as the sacrifice to do for us what we cannot do for ourselves. We don't need to be embarrassed of our worldview, because when it's properly understood, it offers hope and a solution to our dilemma. Christianity is true. It describes the world accurately. It holds up to scrutiny, and it provides hope. Now, I get it. I can understand that there are times when we are hesitant. We know that word pride is often cited as a negative, as the cause it is the pursuit of power. Pride in Scripture, 1 John 2, verse 15 to 17, I think it is, talks about the dangers of our pride. I get that. And so we have a tendency to say, I don't want to be proud of something, right? But and I get that, but I think we can be appropriately proud of our God. We can be appropriately proud of the truth that he provides to us in Scripture, because Christianity is true. It describes the world accurately, holds up to scrutiny, provides hope, does all of those things. And that's why I think we've got good reason to celebrate it. And this is the kind of thing that we're going to have to teach our kids, because this is the kind of thing that will help them to see that it matters. Because whatever it is that matters to you as a non-believer, and to me, it was literature, art, music, education, science. Those are the things that mattered. Those were the things that created beauty in the world. But it turns out all of those things are intensely dependent upon a Christian worldview, as you know them today, at least. As you know literature, art, music, education, and science. It turns out that you may not realize this, but all of them emerge, as you know them today, from a Christian worldview. This is why Christianity matters. Not because it creates beauty, but the beauty is there because Christianity is the source. So anyway, I hope that helps you to think about why we ought to be celebrating this, and helps you to answer the second why question. There are good reasons to celebrate our Christian worldview. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, I'll take your calls. Please call in with questions, and we'll be back right after the break. Jay Warner Wallace back here, sitting in for Greg Koukl at the Stand to Reason radio show. Glad to be with you. I just think about how I first started doing radio. I think it was with Greg. I think it was when he asked me to come in and do an interview initially. And I think Greg Koukl was maybe the first person I interviewed with here at the radio show at Stand to Reason. And then had a chance to come on and guest, I think, with Brett. And then I got asked to come in and do a show with Greg. And he's the reason, of course, why I changed my name to J. Warner Wallace, because I had, Jim Wallace was being confused with Jim Wallace from Sojourners. All of that being said, great to be with all these years working, partnering with you guys here at Stand to Reason. I feel like I am the extended part of the family, and glad to be so. My first chance to kind of serve in a ministry after leaving my law enforcement career was here at Stand to Reason. So really glad to be part of this. And we're going to go right now to our first phone call. Please call in with your questions here, and we'll take them here on the call. By the way, let's go to Brandon first. So Kyle, if you'll shoot me to Brandon, we'll do that first. By the way, Kyle is the great the person who makes this all happen, so he doesn't get enough credit, and I told him that before we started. So go ahead, Kyle, give us the first question from Brandon in Sumner, Washington. Go ahead, Brandon. Brandon, you're
Hi,
up.
hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Good to talk to you.
Hi, sorry. My question was in regards to faith, and I don't know how to say this, like kind of, I don't want to say losing your faith, but you just feel dry, and you feel like you want your faith to be stronger, but you also can't find the motivation to get your faith stronger. You can't find the motivation to read your Bible and to learn more. And that's kind of the stage that I'm in right now. I want to take my faith serious, but I also can't find it in myself to do it. It's kind of a weird spot that I'm in, and I want to care more, and I feel like I can't get myself to really get in it. And I know I need to, and I know it's like the foundation of my life, but I'm just having a hard time.
Yep. No, I'm glad you called. Let me ask you, Brandon, just out of curiosity, we can ask a couple of questions to kind of help you answer this question for yourself. Are you connected right now to a church family?
Yes and no. There's a church that I go to, and it's probably not enough. And my son does a preschool there, so.
I think part of it is that we are so multidimensional as humans, right? We're not just thinkers. We experience things with our senses. You are probably involved in some bit of work that gives life meaning. That we're created as humans to serve and to work in certain ways, and you get energized by your physical activity in the world. And I think sometimes what happens is this is for me at least, and I'll share this with you and see if it resonates with you, is that there are times when I can be really self-focused and kind of spiral into a pity party, not a pity party, but where I'm just, I think the most boredom and apathy it starts to generate when I'm sitting still too long and I'm not in the game. And it's easier to act your way into feelings than to feel your way into actions. And so for me, sometimes when I'm not feeling it, I realize it's because I haven't been doing it in a while. For example, just look at it from a running perspective. Susie, my wife Susie's a runner. I run with her. I'm not a runner. I don't consider myself to be a runner. That's her thing, but I like to hang out with her. So I'm going to run because she runs. I notice, though, if I'm traveling a lot and I fall out of that running pattern, I could stay out of that running pattern, right? I mean, I could be very apathetic about my running schedule. If she wasn't into it, I maybe wouldn't do it at all. But what I notice is that when I get back on the trails and I start running, well, then if I'm doing that every other day and I'm not traveling for a sequence of, let's say, I take a couple of months off a year where I don't travel at all. And so if I'm in that period of time and I'm running every other day, well, then I'm not going to miss a day. And the more I do it, it's kind of like when you're into a diet and you're eating a certain way. It's like you don't want to break your diet because now you're motivated because you're actually in the game. You've got some skin in the game. And I think part of it for us as Christians is that if the extent of your Christian life is just your discipline about reading Scripture, well, then I can see how you could fall off that, right? But if everything that has meaning in your life is some expression of most people I know who fall into apathy, well, they're not serving anywhere. Now you could argue they're not serving because they're apathetic, or you could argue that they're apathetic because they're not serving. So I always look at it and say, hey, let's just try acting your way into a feeling before you try to feel your way into an action. And so now you can change everything about your life, not by changing your mind, by changing your calendar. So I would say get your calendar out. Look at your calendar. What you love, what you're obsessed with, what you worship. I can tell what it is from your calendar because it turns out it's what we're spending our time on. That's the stuff that really is our God. So I always think if you're starting to fall off and feel like I'm not sure that God is my God anymore, you need to correct your calendar. Because once you start to move into that, God's going to reveal certain things that are going to restore the passion to your walk. But if you isolate yourself, then you're not giving God the opportunities to reveal certain things to you. If you're waiting for God to come to you in a dream, it's time to get out into the world serving as Jesus would have you serve. And as you do that, you're going to meet people, start talking to people, and you're going to see that your life is going to become more robust. So I always tell people when they're struggling with this, lack of passion, that it's really important now to act. I think it's sometimes true for me also if I get to be a little bit moody or depressed. I'm too self-focused. The solution for this is to focus on others. So that's where I think service is one of those greatest things that can move you from apathy to passion, also from being self-focused and kind of circling to looking outward and to moving forward, to get off the stick, to move towards something, is just get out and start. Act your way into the feelings. I don't know if that helps you at all, but I suspect that probably if you look at your life right now, you're probably not doing a lot, right? It's not on your calendar. You're probably not engaged in a lot. People who are engaged in doing this all the time can move past their doubts and their apathy. Look, you even know this from kind of the later interviews and statements of Mother Teresa, who we always saw as, I mean, she had doubts, or she had certain points where she had questions, or certain, but what did she do? She simply faithfully worked her way through those. You just serve through that. Just kind of, you get, if nothing else, you're passionate about the people you're serving, and it turns out that's when God reveals himself to you in ways that reignites your passion for him. So I would just say, at least to start, do something. Do something. Don't wait for something to happen. Do something.
I think you're totally right, because there's no set schedule I have for going to church or anything like that. I mean, I guess I hate to say it out loud. Like, I guess you could say that I'm pretty lukewarm, if anything. But I'm like hungry to not be. But it's like I can't get myself to take that next step and find that going to church is more important than, well, I got to do this one thing on Sunday, so I can't go this Sunday. Maybe I'll do it next Sunday. But I know that you're right. I just need to do it and not just read my Bible 2 times a week, but to actually dive in and take it more serious.
Yeah, that's a good point. And you're in an unusual spot, a good spot, because you're telling me that you sense something's wrong you want to fix. When you know you've really slipped into apathy is when you don't even, it's not even on your radar anymore, right? It's like it's not even something you're thinking about anymore. That's when you know it's already something in your rearview mirror. But for you kind of feel this tension. And that tension is it'll feel so good when you've overcome that tension, because you won't feel the stress of like, what you're really saying is that I'm not engaged anymore. But I bet you, for example,
Absolutely.
when I'm not engaged, I know I'm looking, if there was a way to record the number of minutes, of listening minutes, to each podcast, when I'm starting to check out for a season, I'll bet you my sports listening is way up. Like sports, not just like live sports, but when you find yourself listening to hours and hours of sports commentary, you got a problem, okay? Because to be honest, the event already left, and now you're listening to someone dissect the event or predict the next upcoming event. Come on, really? That to me is a sign that, okay, I'm checking out. I need to refocus. And I just know it's not a matter of trying harder. That's not what I'm saying. You're going to spend a certain number of hours doing a number of things this week. Just change the things you're doing, and you'll see that you'll have a change of attitude, right? It's not like you have to work any harder. It's just about reappropriating your time. What are you listening to? We get really easily distracted right now, and so it's a matter of just kind of reassigning those things. There is something right now that probably excites you. Ask yourself the question, why am I excited about that thing? Well, why does that thing excite me? That's a lot of it, right? What is it I've changed about the way I'm thinking about God that it doesn't excite me that way that still does? So I think a lot of it is 2 things I've noticed. When people are certain something is true, they are far more likely to stand in it in a crisis and to chase it when they are certain it's true. So sometimes the reason why we're apathetic is because we don't really know if it's true, and we think it's like true like an opinion, and so who really cares? If we saw the urgency of a cure, if we saw that this was a cure, that's the cure for what's killing all of us, how we probably wouldn't be as apathetic as we are. We know it's a cure, but we kind of act like it's. Remember when Penn and Teller, the 2 comedians who are atheists, one of them said that somebody approached him backstage and was trying to convince him of the gospel, and although he thought it was a mockery, he mocked it. But he said, I at least respect the fact that this guy actually believed what he was saying. The rest of you Christians who say this is, the gospel is this thing, but then why would you not share it with me? Why would you not, if it really is the cure for what's killing us, and it really is the way that we all can transcend this life, why wouldn't you all be sharing it with me? And the fact that this guy did, at least you can tell he actually believes it. He actually believes it's true. And I think sometimes that's part of it, is that that a lot of what we do to restore apathy with Gen Z, we would argue, is the 2 whys for every what we talked about in the first segment, right? When students have answers to those whys, they are far more engaged in the what. So I think that that's part of it. Is it in your life? But if you're listening to this show, you're probably already doing that. Now it's just a matter of stepping out and acting through your feelings. So I hope that helps a little bit.
That did help a lot, and you were absolutely right that I do feel that tension, because I know how important it is, because it's changed my life for the better. I've only been a Christian for maybe, 3.5, 4 years now, but it's done immense things in my life and given me more meaning than I ever thought I could have. And so when I get into these periods, like right now, it makes me anxious, because I'm like, okay, I can't lose this. I need this. I know for a fact that I need it, and that's what kind of gets me so much. And then I get my own way. So that's the problem. But your advice has been great, and I appreciate it, son.
Thanks, Brandon. I appreciate you. Well, okay, great. So anyone else wants to call and ask a question, please do. But before I get that next question in, I have a few minutes here, I think, before I want to just cover a couple of things that I think that have distracted us and have stolen and robbed our passion. And I think that a lot of that is our changing perspectives and the way that social media is stealing our passion and stealing our priorities. And I think look, I don't want to be the old guy who's sitting on the front lawn, who was raised in a non-social media world. And so I'm shaking my fist, get off my lawn, you people who are like, I'm not saying, I don't want to be heard as that guy. But the reality of it is we have to be wise about how we look at the world around us and we navigate the changes in culture. Things change in technology. And technology, when it changes the world around you. I'm sure when the first phones were developed and we had the ability to talk with each other across the country, it changed the way we interacted. It changed other dominoes in the culture fell that were probably not directly related to communicating on a phone. And they fell as a consequence of having the phone. So let me just share with you what I think is being affected by social media, and by our use of social media. I think it exacerbates what I call two forms of autonomy. I call the first informational autonomy. And I think that's because most of us now get our information and our news from these platforms. I mean, Twitter, for example, can shape outcomes. This was true before Twitter. Look, even technology. When the Drudge Report first started, the kinds of stories you're willing to put on the page, that you're willing to report, can shape or can reveal your worldview. And so how I curate the news can actually channel how people think about the news, because I'm not putting things on the news, on the platform rather, that argue for a different perspective. So Twitter, for example, it acts as a news filter. It acts as an aggregator for many people in this social media age. For a lot of people, they're not going to the news sources. They're going to social media that collects from the news sources and presents a certain view. And as users, I think we choose where and how we get our information based on our worldview. If you don't want to if you think that, for example, Twitter is too far to one end or the other, you just won't use it. You'll find that social media platform that you think you can aggregate the kind of news that you agree with. And so we're tailoring our information consumption. As a matter of fact, we're tailoring it so much that now it just reflects our own personal presuppositions, our biases, and our beliefs. I saw that this was today or yesterday, Elon Musk posted on Twitter that he thinks it's the algorithm. It doesn't necessarily is doing this intentionally, but it looks for what you like and what it thinks you like, and it tries to show you more of that. Because what's the goal? Keep you on the platform. So it's just looking, and so if you don't look at your news feed, if you don't click those little three buttons at the top and just show you the latest, it'll instead show you what it thinks you want to see. And there's the problem, is that we form what I call informational autonomy. We are just reflecting back to ourselves our own biases. But it also amplifies, I think, social media, a second form of autonomy, which I simply call moral autonomy. Do you know there's a recent survey, I think it was last year, that said, a quote, according to the majority of American adults, which was at 57% then, knowing what is right or wrong is simply a matter of personal experience, unquote. So that form of moral independence, I think, is even stronger in teens than it is in adults, but clearly it's impacting every single group. And social media algorithms, like we just talked about that Elon Musk was talking about on Twitter, they only strengthen that. They only strengthen our personal echo chambers. They just unite us with other like-minded users who already share what we believe. It just continues to shape, to amplify and strengthen what we already believe about the world. And we end up surrounding ourselves with people who already agree with us. So it's the rise of these two forms of autonomy, informational and moral autonomy, driven by algorithms, right, in the social media world. That, I think, is what's contributing to the shift in priorities. Also, I do think it's contributing to our growing apathy because we're distracted. How many times I'm just noticing this is driving me crazy. I don't know why I'm going to complain about this, but if I don't follow a lot of people on Instagram, but you'll notice you'll get to your feed, your maybe 4 or 5 updates from your friends, and then it'll shift to suggestions. The idea here, and it'll usually give you a little red dial that'll say, if you want to click this link, you can see the older stuff. But once you've already seen it once, it's going to give you only suggestions of what it thinks will keep you on the platform. How many times have you opened a social media platform for the purpose of just checking with your friends what the updates are, and then you're on there 40 minutes later looking at suggested content? Well, then it's doing its job perfectly, and it's amplifying. It's keeping you on the platform, but it's also only going to show you the things that's going to keep you on the platform. So you end up with an algorithm that it just mirrors back to you your beliefs, and that strengthens your world. It doesn't even show you two people on the same platform can have a very different experience because it's trying to read your mind. Well, I want to take a break. And when we come back from the break, I'm going to show you the 3 things that moral and informational autonomy ends up doing to us, and the shift in the way we know things and what we value. And I think it's a perfect tie into what Brandon is saying, that we can be easily distracted and lose our passion for what's true about the world based on a Christian worldview, and we can substitute the weaker worldview of what's popular in the world. And that's part of the reason why I think we're seeing this shift, and why I think you're probably going to have more people, especially young people, who will say, I'm losing my passion about this. I'm more passionate about the things of the world, which, by the way, are constantly being fed into your social media feed. So if you've got a question about that or anything else about the Christian world, would you please give us a call? By the way, the number is 855-243-9975. It's 855-243-9975. 9975. Give us a call. We'll be answering your questions here at Stand to Reason. Okay, J. Warner Wallace sitting back with you, sitting in for Greg Koukl, who is out writing a book, as he should be. Greg Koukl books are fantastic, so we want to always encourage Greg to be writing his books. And luckily for you, I've got Kyle here at the horns with Amy Hall, who are telling me to unmute myself when I'm supposed to, rather than talk to nobody, which I just got done doing for a minute or so. And now that I'm back with you, I want to just advise you of a couple things that are coming up that are worth your attention. And one of them is the Women in Apologetics Conference, which is coming up at June 9th. So it's almost on us, in Boca Raton, Florida, June 9th to 11th. And you can learn more about this at womeninapologetics.com, womeninapologetics.com. And you want to register, you can attend live. You can attend virtually, though, too. And the speakers are going to be great. There's a bunch of speakers, but I just want to promo the ones that I know personally who are going to be fantastic. Of course, Amy Hall at the top of that list. She'll be talking about how to persevere through opposition, if ever there was a time for us to be talking about that topic, it is now. So if all you did was go for that one reason, that would be enough. Marie Dusan, Krista Bontrager are going to be talking about a role model for justice. Katie Foster, that will be talking about God is right about sex and marriage, sincerely the children. So we'll be talking about from a children's perspective. And T.C. Cannon will be talking about unshakable, the cross of Christ and the problem of evil. There's a bunch more people, but those are going to be great talks. You're going to hear more about paganism, cultural apologetics, critical race theory, which is going to be important, of course, this time, transhumanism, something I think people are going to be encountering more and more in the future, and of course just the case for the Gospels, and much, much more. That's at womeninapologetics.com. It's going to be in Boca Raton and live June 9th through 11th, coming up here next month. But not just that. I mean, you'll see that our speakers travel quite a bit, and they do a lot of that at your request. And so you got John and Tim and Alan and all the rest of the apologists would love to come out to your church, to your conference, to your event. So if you're planning something like that and you want a speaker, then just schedule a speaker. You can even schedule a live stream. I think we all got good at this, right? Post-pandemic, you can just do a live stream, and so you can get that at just by emailing us at booking booking@str.org. Booking@str.org. You'll be emailing Darcy, and she will take care of all of that scheduling. Remember to call us if you want to ask a question either this hour or the next hour, which is going to roll over here at the top of the hour. And you can call us right now to ask that question at 855-243-9975. 855-243-9975. Now, before the break, I was talking a little bit about the way that informational and moral autonomy affects the way we perceive the world around us and how social media is amplifying that. Let me give you 3 ways that I think to make it really clear to you in your own life. And I think it does tie into whether or not we are apathetic or passionate about what we believe as Christians. The first change, the shift I'm seeing with social media is a shift from objective truth to personal belief. Objective truth to personal belief. I think there's all this competition between news services and social media platforms often just makes opposing claims about the same topics, whatever the topic may be, about the same occurrence, whatever the news is that day, the daily occurrences, the historical events. We can have opposing claims about these. And this is typically what's always happened. It's always been the case in history that you'll have certain media outlets who will make opposing claims. But for many users of those services now, the facts are simply now a matter of opinion. Everything has become a matter of opinion. When you know this for a fact, when you look at a news claim online, what's the first thing you do is you check, well, who's writing it? Because you figure, well, that's just there. I could disregard everything from this guy, or I want to accept everything from this author. I think this is exacerbated by our individual informational autonomy, right? Personal beliefs that are related to my truth or to your truth, the way we always say that now with the possessive pronoun. They've now replaced these notions that we've always had in the past of is there ever a truth, or is everything just a matter of my truth and your truth? Have we shifted entirely from objective truth to personal belief? I think this is one of the challenges, and I think that social media exacerbates that. So don't be surprised to find unity kind of hard to come by, elusive, in this kind of an environment. So one of the takeaways for me is I'm not surprised anymore. If we can't agree about objective facts, then we simply begin to separate along subjective biases. If we cannot agree on objective realities, that can be very uniting to agree on an objective reality. What will happen is we will devolve into personal biases. And we see that happening right now. If all truth is a matter of individual opinion, then disagreement about a set of established facts, that ends up feeling like an attack on personal beliefs. If you think that all truth is based in your personal belief, your person, then an attack on a claim feels like a personal attack. And we are definitely, and by the way, social media makes those personal attacks. Everyone's a hammer looking for a nail. Everything in social media is anonymously amplified in a way that's not helpful to the conversation. Without your identity being exposed, if I feel like you're far away when I'm clubbing you to death, I'm going to club you to death more eagerly and without any remorse. Because you're just an anonymous figure across the world. You're just a social media icon. You're just a little, avatar. The second way I think we're seeing the shift is we're shifting from transcendent righteousness to personal morality. As individuals, we are increasingly acknowledging, we are acknowledged as the individual, as the final authority for truth claims, right? So everything is grounded in the person. Well, moral truth claims are a part of that grounding. And I think this has become a very controversial point of division. It's unlike scientific facts or historical facts. Those kinds of truths describe what is or what happened. But moral truth claims prescribe what ought to be or what ought to have happened. And social media platforms host more than descriptions now of reality, right? I mean, most of the time when you're on social media, you know that social media also platforms and affirms a plethora of prescriptions, not just descriptions, but prescriptions about what's now acceptable. What is acceptable behavior? What's an acceptable attitude in any given situation? In an environment like that, where it's all about prescriptive, subjective claims from who's the loudest or most authoritative, who has the most followers, who's going to get placed by the algorithm at the top of your feed, that kind of environment, well, what's morally true for you is rejected by the people who think it's not morally true for them. And so if I have the largest platform, now we're really starting to see how might makes right. And as moral autonomy rises, the fashionable, the kind of ethical opinions, the ones that the people are popular right now, those opinions, they get elevated against and above those ancient, unchanging commandments of an objective reality of God. So let's face it, even when you're making a claim about what God believes about something, that is even going to be seen as simply a subjective opinion. So that's why now I'm not surprised about how people are acting in this area either. I actually think that I'm not surprised that I'm seeing this high level of heated kind of vitriol and hostility that you see in this environment. I'm not surprised by that. Why would you be surprised by that? It's just one thing to be corrected on a description, right, about what is. It's another thing to be corrected about a prescription about what ought to be. Disagreements about moral behavior are just flammable kindling for social media wildfires. It's one thing to disagree about an event. We can try to find facts. Well, the video doesn't show that. But then when you start to, if all moral truths are subjective, you're really attacking me personally when you reject my moral view. And I'm not surprised that we're seeing this kind of high level of hostility any more than I'm surprised that we're finding it elusive to agree on objective facts. And social media is only amplifying this in a way that we just couldn't predict. I think we're also, though, shifting in one last way, and that is from collective aspirations to personal brands. What I mean is that autonomy, especially when it leads to forms of selfishness, right? Because if I'm autonomous and I don't need anybody else, if I can answer all my questions by looking at my preferred websites, or I don't have, why would I start to listen to people who don't agree with me? I can find too much to listen to that does agree with me. And I think that kind of autonomy is clearly the enemy of community. If there's no, I don't know anyone who agrees with everything I believe. I don't even agree with myself sometimes. So what are the odds you're going to find somebody for which you can find no point of disagreement? I think the community is about deciding to love people around the most important things that unite us and not allowing our differences to divide us. But I think we are increasingly seeing examples of how autonomy is an enemy of community, especially like even in professional sports. I'm seeing it, like individual players, right, often ascend past the status of their team. So when you look at their social media platforms, it's all about them, not about the team. The team is almost interchangeable. If I'm a really great quarterback, for example, it's about my personal brand. I mean, look, there was a time when you could not develop a personal brand. I mean, you were dependent on legacy media to promote you. Now you got a player. You can have a player who has 5 million followers on Twitter, and every single move they make and statement they make is made. No one even cares about that. They could be with another team. You see this now, movement from one. It's not about team and community anymore. It's not about a team that reflects a community anymore. It's about individuals with personal brands who make decisions whether they're going to play here or there. And so you see this all the time, that social media platforms are rivaling or eclipsing the organizations that gave them the opportunity to begin with. So personal goals, especially when they kind of increase your revenue, they increase your popularity, they increase your celebrity, your notoriety. They're often way more important than team goals. And so social media makes this possible, not just for pro athletes. This makes it possible for all of us. There was a time when you couldn't be an influencer, quote unquote, but you can now. You can be the next Instagram influencer. You can be the next TikTok star. You can be somebody who never would have had a chance when all that was available to you was legacy media. Well, now you can craft your own future if you just hit that thing that seems to be the thing that will ignite a fire online. So again, why would you be surprised? Another thing not to be surprised about. I'm not surprised to find that things like, I don't know, like selfless sacrifice are more elusive in an environment like this. I'm not, just the same way I'm not surprised to find more vitriol. I'm not surprised to find sacrifice elusive. Our ambitions on social media, they can also change the way we see the world and how we see our place in the world. I think fewer people are willing to sacrifice for the good of a group. Given our constant interaction with social media platforms that simply amplify individual brands over collective aspirations. And that shift from collective aspirations to individual brands might be the most detrimental as we go forward. So I think these shifts in priorities and perspectives have consequences. Ideas have consequences. As John Stone Street says, bad ideas have victims. It's probably not a coincidence that during the same period of increasing autonomy, right, that we see both especially exacerbated on social media, that we also see a rise, at least reported in surveys, of mental illness and depression and suicidal ideation, especially amongst young people. That's also on a rise at the same time that we see this rise in autonomy, both moral and informational autonomy online. When we separate from one another, and when we separate from the transcendent God who's created us, we sink deeper into despair. When it's all about our level of celebrity in the culture, if today is not a good day for your celebrity, we're so caught up in ourselves that no wonder we are navel gazing and upset about how things are going. The same as we talked about with the last caller. If we are focused on ourselves, we are far more likely to get depressed. Then it's focusing on others that's a cure for that kind of stuff. It's a focusing on others that's a cure for apathy. And that's why I think the gospel is this. So I often say that the gospel cures every kind of stupid you can think of, whatever stupid it is, including autonomy stupid and social media stupid. The gospel is the cure. And it's the gospel is the cure for selfishness. The gospel is a cure for division, for self-righteousness, for self-obsession. It shines a light on all that is broken, everything that's fallen in our human nature. And it points us to a solution that can heal the soul, can unify our nation, can guide us into the future. The gospel is the cure for selfishness, self-righteousness, and self-obsession. We got to be focused on this now. I think that the creators of social media platforms, and even as we hope, maybe Elon Musk will save this platform. Really? Do we really think that the creators of social media platforms, or even the next owner of a social media platform, is going to be able to solve this problem? I actually think the people who started these platforms in the past were surprised by the unexpected shift that occurs. You can't always see downfield when these kinds of changes occur. But none of where we ended up was a shock to God. He knew this is what we were capable of, and he knew the end from the beginning. He understands our fallen, self-focused inclination, and he provides us a solution. He provided it nearly 2,000 years ago. God demonstrated that in his own love for us, that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. So it's time for us to return to what really matters. And what really matters is the gospel. Let's don't forget that. I'll see you in the next hour. J. Warner Wallace sitting in for Greg Koukl here at Stand to Reason.